We can't miss your sister's divorce celebration. Your wedding can wait. My mother said it over the phone like she was declining a casual brunch invitation, not abandoning her youngest daughter's wedding for a party celebrating her oldest daughter's third failed marriage. I stood in my kitchen, wedding invitation samples spread across the counter, and felt something inside me finally snap. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply said, I understand, hung up, and called the one person in my family who had never made me feel like an afterthought. 3 days later, my grandmother would gather the entire family for an announcement that would finally show my mother the true cost of her choices. Before I tell you what my grandmother revealed, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from right now? And when you hear what happened at that family meeting, tell me honestly, do you believe that karma eventually catches up with people who hurt you? My name is Genevieve. I'm 28 years old, and I've spent my entire life being second place to my sister Nicolette's chaos. Let me explain what that looks like in the Sullivan family of Boston, Massachusetts. Nicolette is 4 years older than me, and from the moment I was born, she made sure I knew my place. She was dramatic where I was quiet. She demanded attention while I learned to survive without it. She burned through money, relationships, and opportunities like they were disposable, while I saved every penny and built something stable. Our mother, Patricia, worshipped Nicolette. It didn't matter how many times my sister failed or who she hurt in the process. Mom always had an excuse ready. Nicolette's first marriage at 22 lasted 8 months before she cheated. Mom blamed the husband for being emotionally unavailable. Her second marriage at 25 lasted 2 years before she drained their joint account and disappeared to Miami for a month. Mom said she was finding herself. Her third marriage, to a genuinely kind man named Paul who adored her, lasted 18 months before Nicolette got bored and filed for divorce. Each time, there was a celebration. Mom called them freedom parties and new chapter gatherings. She'd rent venues, invite friends, and toast to Nicolette's courage in leaving relationships that no longer served her. Meanwhile, I did everything right by their standards. I graduated top of my class. I got a stable job in healthcare administration. I saved for a down payment on a condo. I dated carefully, seriously, with intention. And when I met David 3 years ago, I knew I'd found someone worth keeping forever. David was everything my sister's husbands weren't. Patient, kind, financially responsible, and completely devoted. He proposed on a rainy Tuesday because he said he couldn't wait for perfect weather when he'd already found his perfect person. We planned our wedding for a year, choosing a date in September that had seemed free of family conflicts. We were wrong. 6 weeks before our wedding, Nicolette announced her divorce from Paul. She wanted a celebration on our exact date. And our mother, without a moment's hesitation, chose her. You have to understand, Mom said when I called to protest. Nicolette is going through a difficult time. She needs family support. Your wedding is a happy occasion. You don't need us there as much as she needs us at her party. My wedding is in 6 weeks. We've already sent invitations. You RSVP'd yes. Things change, Genevieve. Family comes first. I am your family. Don't be dramatic. You sound like your sister. She laughed at her own joke. The wedding will be fine without us. You're so independent anyway. You've never needed anyone. There it was. The line I'd heard my entire life. You don't need us. You're fine on your own. You've never needed anyone. They'd made me that way. They'd created someone who didn't need them because they'd never been available to be needed. And now they were using my resilience as an excuse to abandon me again. I hung up the phone and cried for an hour. David held me, furious on my behalf, offering to elope, to cancel, to do whatever I needed. But I didn't want to change my wedding. I'd planned it for a year. I'd dreamed about it my whole life. I wasn't going to let my mother's favoritism steal that from me. Instead, I called my grandmother. My father's mother, Eleanor Sullivan, was 83 years old and the matriarch of our entire family. She'd built a small real estate empire over 50 years, starting with one rental property and expanding to 12 buildings across Boston. She was sharp, observant, and had never approved of how my mother treated me. I heard about your mother's decision, Grandma Eleanor said when she answered. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the anger underneath. Patricia called to tell me she was attending Nicolette's party instead of your wedding. She seemed to think I'd approve. Did you? I told her she was a fool. And I told her she'd regret it. Grandma paused. Genevieve, I want you to know that I will be at your wedding. I wouldn't miss it for anything. But I'd also like to do something else. Something I've been planning for a while now. What do you mean? I'm going to call a family meeting. This Sunday, I'm going to make an announcement about my estate. And I think your mother needs to hear it before she makes any more decisions she can't take back. 3 days later, the entire Sullivan family gathered at Grandma Eleanor's brownstone in Beacon Hill. My parents were there, along with Nicolette, who was already complaining about the inconvenient timing of the meeting. My father's brother and his family came from the suburbs. Even some cousins I rarely saw made the trip. Grandma Eleanor sat in her favorite armchair, looking every bit the queen holding court. She waited until everyone was settled, until the small talk died down, until all eyes were on her. "I'm 83 years old," she began. "My doctor says I'm healthy as a horse, but at my age, you don't take tomorrow for granted. I've spent the last year updating my estate plans, and I've decided that my family should know my intentions now, while I'm still here to explain them." My mother leaned forward eagerly. I knew she'd been counting on Grandma's inheritance for years. The real estate portfolio alone was worth millions. Patricia had already mentally spent money she didn't yet have. "My estate will be divided as follows." Grandma Eleanor pulled out a document, though I suspected she had it memorized. "My son Robert and his family will receive 3 properties. Fair market value of approximately $1.2 million. My uncle nodded, unsurprised. He and Grandma had always been close. My son William, Genevieve's father, and his family were originally designated to receive the remaining 9 properties. Total value of approximately $4.8 million. My mother's eyes lit up. $4.8 million. I could see her calculating her share. "However," Grandma continued, and the word hung in the air like a blade, "I've made some changes." Mom's smile flickered. "William will still receive 4 properties. Value of approximately $1.6 million. That is his birthright as my son, and I honor it." My father nodded slowly, confusion creeping into his expression. 4 properties instead of 9 meant $3 million had gone somewhere else. "The remaining 5 properties," Grandma said, her eyes finding mine, "totaling approximately $3.2 million, will go directly to my granddaughter Genevieve. In trust. Controlled entirely by her, with no access or oversight from her parents." The room went silent. My mother's face drained of color. Nicolette made a choking sound. I felt David squeeze my hand so hard it almost hurt. "I'm sorry," Mom finally managed. "Did you say $3.2 million? To Genevieve directly." "I did. But that's more than William is getting. That's more than any individual person in this room." "That's correct." "Why?" My mother's voice cracked. "Why would you do that?" Grandma Eleanor set down her document and folded her hands. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but carried to every corner of the room. "Because I've watched. For 28 years, I've watched how this family treats that girl. I've watched you skip her piano recitals to attend Nicolette's drama club. I've watched you forget her birthdays while throwing elaborate parties for her sister. I've watched you fund Nicolette's disasters while telling Genevieve to figure things out on her own." "Mother, that's not," my father started. "Don't interrupt me, William. You're as guilty as your wife. You let it happen. You watched your youngest daughter be pushed aside for decades, and you said nothing." Grandma's eyes were fierce. "And now I hear that you're skipping her wedding to attend a divorce party. Her wedding, William. The most important day of her life. For a party celebrating your other daughter's 3rd failed marriage." Nicolette stood up. "That's not fair. I'm going through a difficult time. Sit down." Grandma's voice was ice. "I'm not finished with you either." Nicolette sat. "Nicolette, you are not included in my will at all. You will receive nothing from my estate." "What?" Nicolette's screech echoed off the walls. "You can't do that. I'm your granddaughter too. You're a woman who has drained every resource offered to her and destroyed every good thing she's touched. 3 marriages, Nicolette. 3 good men who loved you, used up and discarded. And your parents have funded every bad decision, enabled every selfish choice, and asked nothing of you in return." Grandma shook her head. "I will not do the same. If you want wealth, you can build it yourself. Like Genevieve did." My mother collapsed into a chair, literally fell backward into the seat like her legs had given out. "This isn't happening," she whispered. "This can't be happening." "It is happening." Grandma stood, slowly but with dignity. "And let me be very clear about something. This decision is final. The trust is already established. The properties are already transferred. There is nothing you can do to change it." She looked at my mother with something close to pity. "I gave you 30 years to treat your daughters equally. You chose favorites. Now so have I. She walked to where I was sitting and placed her hand on my cheek. Genevieve, I will be at your wedding. I will sit in the front row. I will watch you marry that wonderful young man, and I will know that at least one person in this family recognized your worth. She smiled. You don't need their approval, sweetheart. You never did. But now you have proof. The meeting dissolved into chaos after that. My mother was crying, demanding explanations. Nicolette was screaming about lawyers and contesting the will. My father sat in stunned silence, perhaps finally realizing the cost of his complicity. David and I slipped out quietly. We didn't need to stay for the aftermath. My wedding happened 6 weeks later, exactly as planned. Grandma Eleanor sat in the front row, radiant in a blue dress she'd bought specifically for the occasion. My uncle and his family came. Friends I'd made who had become more family than my actual family filled the seats. My parents didn't come. They went to Nicolette's divorce party instead, though I heard later that the celebration was more like a funeral. Nobody was in the mood to toast to Nicolette's freedom when they'd just learned what that freedom had cost them. My mother called me the day after my wedding. She cried. She apologized. She asked if there was anything she could do to make things right. You could have come to my wedding, I said simply. That was all I ever wanted. You chose not to. But the inheritance. This isn't about the inheritance, Mom. It was never about money. It was about you showing up. You didn't. You haven't for 28 years. And now you're calling because you finally faced a consequence. I paused. I don't want your apology. I want you to live with your choice. I hung up. That was 8 months ago. Grandma Eleanor is still healthy, still sharp, still calling me every Sunday to check in. David and I use some of the rental income from my properties to buy our first house. We're expecting a baby in the spring. My mother sends cards occasionally. I don't respond. Nicolette has apparently started dating again, looking for husband number 4. My father has tried to reach out a few times, but he still can't admit what he did wrong. So those conversations go nowhere. I've made peace with it. Not forgiveness, exactly, but acceptance. They made their choices. Grandma made hers. And I'm building a life with people who actually show up. If you're watching this and you've ever been the invisible child, the forgotten one, the one who was told they didn't need anyone because nobody was offering anything, I want you to know something. Somewhere, someone sees you. Someone is keeping track of every sacrifice, every slight, every time you were pushed aside. And someday, somehow, the scales will balance. Maybe it's a grandmother who never forgot. Maybe it's a friend who becomes family. Maybe it's the universe finally paying attention. But it comes. Justice comes. You just have to survive long enough to see it. If this story spoke to you, drop a comment below. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next.